Welcome, everybody. I'm Stacy.
And I'm her daughter, Mickey.
And welcome to KiddieNomics. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We have a follow-up session today, which is going to be awesome. We're going to talk about bonds for kids, which we are super excited about because it's going to be a progression of stocks. So I hope everybody did watch the stocks video on May 8th, and we have our returning KiddieNomics guest expert, Scott Roberts, today. But before we get started, let me do our housekeeping items as usual. So we would obviously like to thank all of the essential workers that's keeping us safe and healthy throughout this time, all the frontline workers, the essential workers, thank you so much.
And the parents who are keeping us entertained.
And the parents who are keeping us entertained. We appreciate all of you, right? Or they appreciate us. So KiddieNomics is here to help kids ages 8+, so ages 8 years old and older, to develop a healthy relationship towards financial literacy, helping to start kids off on the right path to have a successful financial future. And that's what we want for you. The skill of financial literacy is translated no matter what country you live in, no matter your economic background or your status, it doesn't matter. Once you have these skills, it will translate to every single part of your life. So this is what we want to set everybody up for towards a successful financial future. And to do that, in today's session, we're going to welcome Scott Roberts. So Scott is the VP of Sales at STEVLOC Management Inc. Scott is, he has over 20 years of experience as a sales leader in the financial services field. Scott has graduated with his Bachelor of Commerce in 2000 from Carleton University in Ottawa and completed his Canadian Securities Course in 2007. He enjoys spending time with his two wonderful kids, ages 10 and 13, older than her, which is awesome. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Scott Roberts. Hi, Scott. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here.
Hi.
And there he is, yay! So don't forget, everybody, to have your book and pencil ready. Here's our KiddieNomics book as usual with our pencil. And don't forget to take notes because Mr. Scott may play a game or a quiz with you, so you will definitely need that. And also, as usual, the chat box is there to ask any questions that you may have, okay? Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Stacy and Mickey. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, unlike the first time, I am going to do a little bit of a game at the end, so I'll give you a little hint when it's time to pay attention. Well, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun the first time. I couldn't remember what date it was, but Stacy said May 8th. Yes. And this time we're going to talk about bonds. And stocks and bonds go hand in hand. In fact, you often hear people talk about investing in stocks and bonds. And so the first time we talked about stocks, and if you did watch the first show, I guess we'll call it a show, stocks are when you own a part of a company. And so stocks are only companies. And what that means is you can buy a stock in, say, Starbucks or Tesla or McDonald's or any of the major companies, and that means you're part owner. And if the stock goes up, it means the company's doing well. And if the stock goes down, usually the company's not doing well. And so you can make money and lose money based on how well the company's doing. Well, the flip side to that is something called a bond. And a bond is sort of the opposite of a stock. You don't own any of the company, but you actually lend them money. And a bond can be both a company and a government. So we'll get started here and I'll give a little more explanation as we go. So what are bonds? Bonds are just loans. In fact, if the kids on here, if you ever asked your mom to borrow $5 to buy a Frappuccino at Starbucks, or can I borrow some money to download the latest app on my iPad, you've actually, your mom's actually given you a bond. You have borrowed money from her, and then you're going to need to pay her back. And that's exactly what a bond is, just like a loan. So it's a contract between a borrower and a lender, someone who borrows the money and someone who needs the money. It's almost always a government or a company, and it could be a federal government, so like the country of Canada, or it could be a provincial government, For example, Ontario, or it could even be a city. I don't think Toronto has ever issued bonds. I could be wrong. I haven't looked that up, but often cities issue bonds. A bond pays interest or money until it matures. And when it matures, then the loan is paid back. And so here on the left-hand side of the screen, these are a couple actual bonds. Today, bonds are all digital. They're electronic. You don't actually get the paper anymore. But about 10, 15, 20 years ago, you would actually get a piece of paper. And the one on the bottom, you probably can't see it. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around, but the one on the bottom was a 30-year bond from a company called Texaco, which is an oil and gas company in Texas. And they were going to pay interest of 8.5% for 30 years. And the person who bought this bond, you can see the numbers down sort of, it's $25,000. So this company was paying 8.5% interest on $25,000 to the person who bought the bond for 30 years. It matured in 2005 or 2006. So I'll tell you, how is a bond different from a stock? I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the key thing here is on the left-hand side of my screen. Stocks mean ownership. You own part of the company, and that's kind of cool. You buy a stock of Apple, you're one of the owners of Apple. Bonds mean a loan, which is also kind of cool. If you bought an Apple bond, that means you lent them money. They borrowed money from you, which is kind of neat. So just to make that a little bit more clear, stocks are shares or ownership of a company. And then you get paid based on the profit or the loss of the company. So stocks go up and down. Bonds are a bit different. Bonds don't ever go down. Bonds are a loan. You've lent the company some money, and they'll pay you interest, and they'll pay you back your money at the time the bond matures. And so a company like Apple, you can buy both stocks of Apple and you can buy bonds of Apple. Same thing with most major companies. In general, stocks are a little bit riskier than bonds. Stocks, you don't know if they're going to go up or down. Bonds, you know how much money you're going to make. They tell you in advance how much they're going to pay you and for how long. So who offers bonds and why would they? And that's exactly the two people that issue bonds. So government bonds, like the Canada Savings Bond, is very, very popular in Canada. When I was a kid, my parents actually bought me, from the year I was 1 until the year I was 10, they bought me a $500 government bond, a Canada Savings Bond, every year. So when I went to university, I had some money to spend. So governments use bonds, and this is maybe pay attention to this part. Government use bonds, the money they get from bonds, for things like new bridges, roads, and other large projects like airports. So they use this for infrastructure, is what it's called. Big projects where the government, maybe the city, the province, or the country may not have enough money to pay for it now. They'll borrow money from people to get those projects completed. Or a company, which is called a corporate bond, companies do the same thing with the money, sort of. They use the money that they get from bonds when they issue bonds. So when you lend them money, they'll use that money for new factories or new products, or maybe hiring more employees or building a new office. A great example might be if, let's pretend, I like Apple, so we'll use Apple. Let's pretend Apple decided they wanted to start making cars, which might happen. Well, they would go out and they'd probably issue bonds, and you could lend them money for 5, 10, or 15 years, and they would use that money to build new factories and hire new employees. And that's how companies grow, by issuing bonds. So take a step back here. So that's what bonds are. Up here on the screen, this is a Canada Savings Bond, actually. This is one that matured in 2015, so just 5 years ago. That's what it looked like. And that's exactly what mine used to look like. By the time I turned about 16 or 17, my parents gave them to me, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. And you take them to the bank and you cash them in, and they pay you out what it's worth. So how do bonds work? So I mentioned this a couple times, but bonds pay you interest. And so that's an important part of this. Bonds don't go up or down in value, they just pay you an interest rate. So you lend your money to either a company or a government, and they'll pay you an interest rate every year that they hold your money. They'll either pay you that money out every year, or they'll let it build up and pay you all at the end. You get to choose when you buy the bond. An interest rate is a percentage of the total money you loaned. I'm not sure how deep we want to go into percentages, but I'll give you an example over here. So $1,000 bond, and you bought it for 5 years at an interest rate of 10%. So that means the bond will pay you $100 a year for 5 years. And at the end of that 5th year, you'll get your $1,000 back. So I lent the government of Canada $1,000 today. They'll pay me $100 each year for 5 years. And at the end of the 5th year, I'll get my $1,000 back. And so there's a chat box. I've got a little prize for the first person who can answer this question. So how much money did you make with this bond? Let me know, Stacey, if anyone logs on and gives a chat.
Let's go, everybody. Let's figure out. So we learned interest rate last week, right? Oh, so there's London. London said 1,500 because, and why is that, London? Because you get $1,000 back from the bond, and you make
500.
You make $500 in interest. Good job. So there you go, Scott. London has answered that question.
Awesome, London. So I'll have to get your address. So I'll mail you something. I'll get Stacey, get London's address if you can when we're done here.
Yes.
That's right. So this bond will pay you back $1,500, which means you actually made $500 because you gave them $1,000 to start. So you got your original money back, and you got an additional $500. It's not a bad deal. That's exactly how a bond works. Did I miss something on there? No, that's exactly how a bond works. So now the next question would be, how can you buy bonds? And a lot like a stock, it's kind of the same idea. Bonds have to be purchased inside an investment account usually. Now, Canada Savings bonds and some of the government bonds, you can just buy directly from the bank. And even today, Canada Savings bonds come in a piece of paper and you got to hang on to it. That's how you cash it back in when it matures. But most bonds are bought through an investment account, a lot like a bank account. And if you remember the stock presentation from a few months ago, it was exactly the same way. If you want to buy stocks, you have to do it through an investment account. I'm going to guess that most people on here aren't 18 years old yet. Most of the kids aren't. And so you can't officially own, I think I spelled officially wrong. You can't officially own an investment account in Canada. You have to be 18 years old. But I do know that your parents could open one in their name and let you play around and buy some bonds or some stocks. You can buy both in the same account. In any investment account, you can buy bonds and stocks. And then when you turn 18, they can turn the account back over to you. They can change the name over to your name. And so that essentially, I mean, it's pretty quick, Stacey, but that's how bonds work. I'm going to do a little quiz now. So there's a few things I touched on. And before we start this quiz, so London's already won one. So London, you can't win again.
Have a raised hand. So Karen has raised her hand, but
sure.
You have to type your question in the question box or the chat box. So let us know what that is for everybody that has any questions. And then in the meanwhile, Scott, why don't we play your quiz? That's going to be super fun. They're really interactive on this part.
Excellent. Okay. So actually, let me go back. I don't want to give anyone away the questions. So you can't win twice. So it's got to be, you can only win once. So London, you already won once and you'll get the same prize. I'll send everybody a Starbucks gift card. Okay.
Yay.
So question number 1, where are we here? Uh-oh. Sorry guys, I'm lost in my own presentation. All right, so the first question is, if a stock is owning a part of a company, a bond means what, that company money? So what does that, what is the blank?
Oh, look, Pert says loan.
Perfect, that's the winner right there for the first question.
Yay! You guys should know the answers to this because we've gone through saving and we've gone through the RESP one a couple of weeks ago, right? And we learned we learned simple interest and compound interest. And what is the difference with assets and liabilities? We learned what is a loan and how does that work. So you guys should be awesome at this game.
Well, this is great. Bonds are just loans. So that's, if you've learned that already about how loans work, this is the same idea. So what is the money called that you earn from a bond every year?
Okay, so we have a great job. So we have a couple of answers. So Egypt says interest, and Nara says interest, and Cody says interest, and it all came in at the exact same time.
Uh-oh, you guys are gonna make me go broke. I'm gonna have to take out a bond. Someone's gonna lend me some money so I can pay for this. All right, I'll give you all one.
Yay!
And then number 3, the last one, and this is a little bit harder one, and I mentioned you should pay attention to that part. Name one thing a government might do with the money it gets from its bonds. A government.
The government gives the money away? No. What does the government do? Mr. Scott did explain it. What does the government do with the money that they get?
He puts it in your bank.
No. What does the government do with the money?
So there's two types of bonds. There's, here's some answers.
Oh, there we go. Builds roads or bridges. London, that's good. Okay, Giselle, you're a new person, so thank you so much. Giselle said build a bridge, and that's right? They put back into infrastructure, Mr. Scott said. I think you said airports.
I did. Yeah, roads, airports, bridges, tunnels, anything that when you look around, you think, where does all this stuff come from? Well, that's usually it comes from the government, and the government gets the money to do that by issuing or selling bonds. Well, so, everyone, I know that was a little quicker than usual.
Sorry, so it's really Henry. He's using his mom's account for Giselle. So now we know. So we'll make sure that we get you out your Starbucks, Henry. That's awesome.
So I'll need you guys to maybe send Stacy and Mickey an email, or somehow Stacy can figure out and get their addresses, and I'll get them in the mail.
Yes, so everybody that has registered for the webinar, I should have your email addresses. So I will follow up with you by email. If you don't hear from me and you did win one of the prizes from Mr. Scott, please send me an email at KiddieNomics101@gmail.com. So KiddieNomics101, the numbers 101
And you can't put any caffeine in your Frappuccinos if you use the gift cards, okay?
No!
That's why I want my Starbucks card.
No.
All right, now, was there some questions? You said someone raised their hand. Were there any questions at all?
Oh, the question didn't come in yet, but we have some questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, fire away.
Awesome. So why would a person, or how do you choose if you were a child looking, so you have your investment dollars, because we're talking about, last week we talked about RESPs and saving towards your RESPs, and what does that look like, putting it into an RESP account. But you can put RESPs into stocks and you can purchase bonds. So would you, as an RESP, if you're saving towards your education, what do you think about putting it into stocks versus bonds? Or why would a child choose a stock versus a bond?
A really good question. Well, there's a couple different ways to answer that question. I'll give my own example. As you mentioned at the beginning, I have two kids who are 10 and 13. So I have an RESP for them, and I only use bonds for it. And the reason I do that is that bonds are generally a little bit less risky, certainly government bonds for sure. And so that's money that I can't really take much of a risk with. My kids, if they're going to go to university, they're going to need the money to go there, and I can't afford to have much risk taken with an RESP account. And so I only invest it in bonds. Now, I don't make as much interest as I would if maybe buying stocks, but I don't take much risk. If you buy a stock of a company and that company goes bankrupt, you lose all that money. And so if that's kind of risky if it's your kid's education you're buying for. So my RESP account is only bonds. But I'd also have a stock account that I like to play with, and I buy stocks, and that's not for my kid's education. That's sort of for me and my retirement, which is called an RRSP, which I don't know if you've gone into that yet with kids or not, probably not. One day you probably will.
Yeah.
So that's just my own perspective. I think if you talk to other advisors, financial advisors, they might say, maybe buy a little bit of stock and a little bit of bonds. And that's a word that's very popular. That's called diversification. And what that means is you buy a little bit of different things so that if stocks go up, you make some money there. And if bonds keep paying, then you keep paying with bonds. It's a way to sort of spread out your money amongst different things, so you don't end up losing in any one sector. So without getting too complicated, the right answer would probably be buy a little bit of both if you can. From my perspective, I don't want to take any chances with my kids' education money, so I only buy bonds, and I only buy government bonds. And so I don't make as much interest on it, but I know it's not going to lose any money. And so that's sort of, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Mickey,
Yeah, Mickey.
Okay, so say you want to buy a bank.
You want to buy a bank or invest into a bank?
Like you want to buy a bank, like
Okay.
a whole bank.
A whole bank? Okay.
And the money that you have saved that you put in the bank that the bank has saved for you, can you take out that money and use that money to buy the whole entire bank? Or will they have to like keep the money in the bank and can't buy the bank?
Okay.
Good question. So there is a good answer to that. In Canada, there's only, can't remember, it's 5 or 6 what's called charter banks. And they are all, if you remember the stock presentation, they're all called publicly traded, which means they issued stocks. So if you wanted to buy Royal Bank, for example, you wouldn't be allowed to buy the whole bank, but you could buy their stocks. And you could start being an owner of Royal Bank or CIBC or Scotiabank. And because it's, the government in Canada regulates banks, which means they make a lot of rules around them. And you can't just go and buy a bank. You're just not allowed. It has to be owned by the public, which means stocks. So you can buy, I actually have stocks of Royal Bank, and some people buy stocks of all the banks. So they own a little bit of all the banks. In the United States, it's a bit different. You actually could own your own bank in the United States. And so in Canada, there's only 5 or 6 major banks. In the United States, there are thousands and thousands of different banks. And you are allowed to own your own bank. There's a lot of rules that go along with it. If you saved up enough money in the bank, you could, if you lived in the United States, let's say you lived in New York, you could take all that money out and buy a bank for sure. You could do that, and then that would be your money and your bank. Can't do it in Canada. You could do it in the United States, but I have to warn you, the bank would be very expensive. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars. You have to do a lot of savings, Mickey, to be able to buy a bank, but you could.
Well, I like the fact that you're thinking big to buy a bank. That's amazing. We play a lot of Monopoly.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Is there any other questions from the chat from any of the kids? We'd love to hear from you. Did we understand what's the difference between a bond and a stock? Yeah? You guys are quiet today. So quiet.
Must have explained it too well.
I think you did. It was a great presentation.
Oh, yeah, one.
Yes. So Melissa says yes, they understood. That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation and a follow-up from stocks. And now we've done bonds. Oh, that's so awesome. The kids say thank you so much. Thank you, says London. So everybody that did answer correctly on the chat, I will send you a follow-up email to get your contact information to figure out how we can get you your prizes from Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I'll warn you, it may take a couple weeks, everybody, or it'll take a while. Mail's pretty slow these days, but I'll get them in the mail as soon as I possibly can.
Perfect. We thank you and we appreciate the fact that you're giving out some prizes. The kids love that. So thank you so much. So we're going to finish up today. This was really short and sweet today. So the last question that we always ask is, what would happen if kids became more financially literate? And our answer is
real change that impacts the world.
Real change that impacts the world. And the reason why is because the more that you guys become, or you ladies and gentlemen become more financially literate, the bigger the impact that you will have, because you will make smarter decisions and choices that will positively affect your financial outcome. And we cannot wait to see that happen as we grow on KiddieNomics. So that's our answer. Thank you very much. And so upcoming schedule for our guest experts. Yay. So next week is resume writing for kids. We love this one. As I keep saying, I had my first job at 11 years old. I delivered the newspaper. I'm not sure if many of you have or have not, but it's a great first job.
I'm thinking of joining because you said that you need to get $5. Who pays $5 to walk around the whole neighborhood?
Yes, so you get tips, right? So all those tip money does add up. So that's gonna be fun. We're gonna learn about how to write a resume if you're looking to seek employment, right? Then after that, this is when we're going to get into vision boarding with Allison Walker. So that's going to be Friday, July 24th. We're going to do vision boarding. Now, you may ask yourself, what does that have to do with financial literacy? Financial literacy encompasses everything. You need a healthy mind and a positive mindset and understanding the skills to manage your money, right? And to do that, part of that is through vision boarding. And I really love that, because with vision boarding, you kind of map out as to a road, as to where you want to go, whether or not it is, we talked a few weeks ago about what it is that you would like to be when you grow up. And some of you said a police officer or a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher.
I think I'm the one who said doctor.
No, there's a lot of kids that said doctor, which is awesome. Awesome. So if you have a vision board and you start envisioning what it is that you want to achieve and the outcome that you're looking for, a vision board kind of puts the pictures on the wall for you or on your board to keep as a daily reminder as to this is where you want to get to. So we're super looking forward to vision boarding for the following week, July 24th. Please remember to ask your parents to join in on this one. So you will need some magazines. I believe the libraries are open now and you can get magazines for 25 cents at the library, or if your parents are out and about, just ask them to pick up some old magazines that they may see lying around anywhere. Of course, disinfect it through this time. So disinfect it. But of course, just if you guys can collect some magazines, because you will need those for the vision board, okay? Then after that, we have Teresa Shaver. I am super excited about this. So I've worked with Teresa for many years through the BACD. They're a business development type of center that's run by the city, and I am very excited. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship for kids. I first met Teresa when I launched my app a few years ago, like about 6 or 7 years ago now. But I used to have an app on Android and iOS, and you guys could have saw me on Dragon's Den. I did Dragon's Den a few years ago also. I'm sure some of you guys are now going to start looking that up.
Can you
Fun
show
fact?
me the show? Can you show me the show?
Fun fact, I've never seen my Dragon's Den episode, so have at it if you'd like to. But we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and what you need the skills that you need to know to build a business plan and things like that. Because at the end of the day, we want to see you kids really, truly achieve whatever goal that it is. And a lot of it is business ownership. And I highly encourage business ownership for your future, right? So we are looking forward to entrepreneurship for kids. And then after that, we have Michael Thorpe, and he's going to be on August 7th, financial planning for kids. That one's going to be amazing, because this is what we're talking about for a roadmap as a financial plan, as to where it is that you're trying to get to, and the financial plan to get you there. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up in the next few weeks. And I think I've had some questions about how is KiddieNomics going to continue. And don't worry, we are continuing on. There's no end date for KiddieNomics. But when September comes, we will be changing the time. So I'm going to send out a survey and see what is a suitable time, but I'm thinking around 5 p.m. every Friday. It will give kids time to get home from school, if we're back in school, and get settled, and then join us for KiddieNomics for the 40 minutes. So that's probably what we're going to get to in September, but we'll see, okay? Contest, right. So we still have the contest going for the 5 nuggets with the great author, Dondre Homer, that wrote a great book for his future young son, talking about 5 nuggets that he would like to teach him as he gets older. So we still have that, and the piggy bank from our KiddieNomics expert from last week, Billy Jane, and it says building your legacy on it. I'm sorry, I should have brought it down today. But we have one winner from last week, so we still have 1 prize left, and I would like to give that away this week. So if you kids do an activity and tag us on KiddieNomics,
Post it so we can see it.
Post it so we can see it. If you check our KiddieNomics page, either on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you can see our contest winner from last week with Shanna and her young daughter, Lillian. They did phenomenal. So if you post it and let us see it, we are super excited to give you away our contest prize. So we hope somebody does it. Although you did win some prizes already. So that was really good.
You guys are lucky.
Wrapping up. So our goal is to create tiny financial literacy ambassadors around the globe. And in order to do that, we'd like you guys to share with us and tell us what it is that you also would like to learn. We have a slew of topics coming up. But if there's anything that you're like, Stacey, I would love to learn more about this, just send us an email or contact us through any one of our handles, which is Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. They're all at KiddieNomics. So please let us know what anybody thinks using the hashtag KiddieNomics or Ask KiddieNomics. And once again, the email address to contact me is kiddienomics101@gmail.com. Now, don't forget, all of the Friday financial literacy videos are posted on the YouTube channel. So you can always go back, because sometimes we miss some of your questions at the end. So you can always go back and watch the videos, okay?
Yeah.
And we highly encourage that, because a lot of the videos is a continuation from what we learned the previous weeks or weeks prior, right? So stocks was May 8th. So we highly encourage you to watch the stocks video, so then you'll kind of understand the bonds seminar. So we are happy if you guys will do that. And don't forget to like our pages, because the more people that like us, the more power and reach that we have out there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. See you next week. Thank you, Mr. Scott. You did amazing. Thank you, all the kids, and thank you for the parents that get your kids on here week after week. We love and appreciate you. Bye.
Bye.